Mackenzie Johnston with Cattle News Central, bringing you your March 14th cattle industry headlines. Brought to you by AgRisk Advisors. They provide risk management programs to livestock producers all across the West. Whether you are concerned about price or weather risk, AgRisk Advisors, they are here to help. With current day market fluctuations, you and I both know there is nothing more important than locking in a price floor on your cattle. The past few weeks have proven that fact. So if you would like to learn more about an LRP, reach out to an advisor today. Also sponsored by American Beef Producer Magazine. They offer in-depth articles on a wide variety of topics within the industry. They feature award-winning photography and so much more within their publication. Their March edition is currently out. I received it in the mail this past week. If you would like to check out that most recent edition, all you got to do is click on the American Beef Producer link above in the caption, and that will take you over to their Facebook page where you can check that out. American Beef Producer Magazine, guiding beef producers for over 25 years. And finally, L-Bar 7 Productions. The record label released Hardship, Heartache, and Horse Thieves, a cowboy compilation album this past Friday. If you have not already checked that out, I encourage you all to do so. You can find it on Spotify, iTunes, anywhere that music is available. Be sure to check out that album as soon as possible. Also, mark your calendars for March 26th. There will be an album release party in Laramie, Wyoming at the Cowboy Saloon and Dance Hall. This is a guaranteed good time. So again, mark your calendars for March 26th. According to Bloomberg, Tyson and JBS are currently making the least amount of money per head in more than 2 years, and that comes from data supplied by Hedger's Edge. This data might mean that Americans could be cutting back on beef in their diets as inflation continues to skyrocket. When it comes to consumers, the concern is discretionary spending. There's a good chance that consumers will look to cheaper proteins or just cut meat protein out of their diet altogether just because of the mere fact that they can't afford it anymore. As of last Tuesday, estimated profit margins for beef packers fell all the way to $102.45 per head. That's the lowest profits packers have seen since before the pandemic back in 2020. And I'm sure this is quite a shock to packers because in the past few years, we've seen their profits at times over $1,500 per head. And then in 2021, I believe their average per head was right around $600. $600 per head profit. So again, I'm sure this might be a tough pill for packers to swallow. Oklahoma Farm Report and Tri-State Livestock News has reported that last week, the Senate passed the fiscal year 2022 Omnibus Appropriations Package. This bill provides funding for a number of programs important to U.S. cattle producers, including a cattle contract library pilot program. This program requires beef packers to report their AMAs, their alternative marketing agreements, also known as sweetheart deals, to the government, and those will then be published. According to NCBA, this program will equip producers with market data they need to make informed business decisions and work to capture more value for producing the highest quality beef in the world. But the North American Meat Institute, of course, they are disgruntled with the program because it blocks public comment. Congress and the Biden administration say that they are all about transparency when it comes to cattle and beef markets, yet they bury this rider without debate in a giant spending bill and direct USDA to create the pilot program without any feedback from beef companies or cattle producers, said Juliana Potts, president and CEO of the North American Meat Institute. Potts believes that packers could have provided valuable feedback on what information should be included and how it should be reported. The law is vague and provides no guardrails for the type or amount of data and leaves program development up to the USDA Ag Marketing Service, the AMS service. RCAF USA believes the contract library is of no value without competition reforms such as the 5014 legislation that was originally introduced by Chuck Grassley of Iowa. According to Brett Kenzie, RCAF USA president, the contract library and other pieces of legislation, including the Cattle Market Compromise Bill, are much ado about nothing. All of this fluff is well intended, said Kenzie, but people need to remember it is important to never confuse activity with progress. He went on to say that more information is good, but not necessarily a viable solution. And that's why 5014 is the real deal. It's not just about cash trade, it's about delivery and a more informed futures market. Increased cash trade values might not always be higher, but those values will be more real if 5014 were to be passed. He closed by saying that no matter how much reporting you do on a fixed game, if you don't do something to solve the problem, the game is still fixed. The daily Livestock report has reported that total beef exports in January were estimated at 287.6 million pounds, 41.6 million pounds, or 16.9% higher than the previous year. China was a main contributor to this growth as they became the third largest market for U.S. beef back in 2021. In January, U.S. beef exports to China were 48.3 million pounds on a carcass weight basis, more than double last year's levels and accounting for 62% of the overall increase. Also in January, U.S. commercial beef production was 2.266 billion pounds, which means that China accounted for 2.1% of the U.S. output. Furthermore, U.S. exports in January represented 12.7% of U.S. production. Fortune News has reported that some experts are now predicting the price of oil could reach $240 a barrel by this summer if Western countries roll out more sanctions on Russian oil exports. If this does occur, our world will most likely see a global recession later this year. I'd have to say that is probably inevitable the way things are going. According to Goldman Sachs, the world will be facing one of the largest energy supply shocks of all time if more Western countries join with the U.S. and impose oil embargoes on Russia. Oil is already nearing its highest price in history as it creeps closer to the all-time peak set back in July of 2008 when crude oil peaked at $147.02 per barrel. A recession is unavoidable at this point, and if oil becomes too expensive for people and governments to afford, it can trigger something called demand destruction. This is where consumers and nations stop using oil when price spikes, and they do not return to it even when prices go back down again. One thing that most analysts, politicians, traders, and others watching the oil markets are saying is that what is currently going on is like nothing they have seen before. This is easily the largest energy crisis we've seen in decades, and the impact on the world's most important commodity is going to be unprecedented. Finally, Ag Journal reported that last week Ukraine banned the export of wheat, oats, and other staples that are crucial to global food supplies. The government made this move in hopes of ensuring an adequate food supply for Ukrainians as Russia continues to wage war on the country. The country also made the decision last week to prohibit the export of millet, buckwheat, sugar, live cattle, and meat and other byproducts from cattle. As you can guess, the export ban will most likely just add to global food shortages. That is all I have for you guys this morning. I hope you all had a wonderful weekend. It was gorgeous here. Our snow is melting. We have a little bit of mud here and there. It just doesn't get much better than this. You guys have yourself a wonderful Monday. I'll catch you later.